No. Okay, yeah, you may just. So, what do I think of the rental proposal properties and the effect of Airbnbs?
Michael goes proposing regulating Airbnbs.
I mean, personally, I feel it's a good step. I mean, whilst everyone should have the right to sort of put forward a bit of a business and income, I feel that Airbnbs have heavily saturated the rental market and made it quite difficult for a lot of people, especially those who won't be able to get onto the housing market, to struggle. And as we all know, rent increases are going up and up. And I feel that the Airbnbs are sort of taken out of the market really. People are finding it more of a profitable way of getting money quickly through a weekend as opposed to long-term tenants. And I feel obviously that's still important, especially young people who want to get on the housing market still need to have affordable rent available. So I do believe that restrictions and some regulations should be put on Airbnbs.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would support regulation of Airbnbs through the planning process. I'm not sure if you're aware at the moment, there are over 1,500 Airbnbs across Thanet. That's a rise over the last 4 years of nearly 500. The increase in Airbnbs is having quite an impact on the rental market, and in fact it's seeing large numbers of people currently living in longer term rented accommodation being evicted through Section 21 orders. Section 21 orders to enable landlords to convert their accommodation into Airbnbs to make more money. I've helped a number of people in Broadstairs who've received these Section 21s and been evicted. It's putting increasing pressure on the rental market. Rents are going up. People are finding it much more difficult to find properties. So it's affecting everybody across the district. So just to reiterate, yes, I would support planning regulations to regulate the number of Airbnbs. I will just add actually, sorry, that a lot of the new houses that are being built, I certainly am aware of a number of them that are being purchased for the specific purpose of offering Airbnbs. I know cases of that, especially in Broadstairs, and this really needs to be tackled. It is something that we need government to take action on, but I certainly think we as a council should be looking at all ways to control the number of Airbnbs in the district.
Yeah, I would also support regulation of Airbnb. And, you know, in Thanet, particularly Margate, there is a tremendous shortage of affordable rental accommodation. And that has been exacerbated by the rising cost of living, rising rents. Airbnbs are cutting a lot of properties out of the rental market, private sector rental market, and therefore creating a scarcity which is having an impact of increasing the amount of rent that's then being charged. The whole thing about, one of the very disappointing things about this whole process of the housing, of the 2,000 houses at the back of Westgate and the others in Burshington and Garlinge, is the lack of affordable housing. And in 2019, when I first joined the council at Westgate Town Council, we met the contractor and quite gaily promised 40% affordable social housing. A couple of years later, they then completely reneged on it. And they, this so-called consultation that we've been going through for several years now is not at all consultation. It's actually a directive from central government in that they fulfil their target of so many millions of houses being built, and where they build them is completely contractor-led. and is building houses for profit and not for people. So I would certainly support any initiative. I mean, this came from Michael Gove, and it's one of the few things I agree with Michael Gove, actually. To increase the amount of affordable, and affordable means different things to different people. You know, the houses that are going to be built here at today's prices will probably be £500,000 each. 2,000 houses is about £1 billion contract, and from that £1 billion contract, you know, the town itself, so Westgate Town Council itself, will probably receive a paltry 100,000. You know, to support the infrastructure, to support community centres, to support places like this. I mean, this community centre here needs to be twice the size it is already, without there being an extra 2,000 houses and God knows how many people that need, you know, medical centres, that need schools for the children, and so on. So on this one, I do agree with Michael Gove.
Yes, on this particular subject, I do actually agree that Airbnbs need to be regulated, but I think we should be looking at the overall reason why people are turning houses into Airbnbs, and that is because they can't afford the mortgages and they're trying to maximise their profit. Obviously, we are a coastal town, so we're going to have more Airbnbs than other towns, but I think, as you say, Michael Gove's idea of actually clamping down on it is a good idea, but I'm not sure how much success you'd have at the planning stage, because I know a lot of people are using the new planning regulations to build Airbnbs in their back garden. And I know this has happened in at least half a dozen cases around where I live, just down the road. So I don't really know how that you'd restrict it with planning unless you change the same legislation again. You could tax it. Michael Gove has had some good ideas. As my friend says, the big problem we've got is social housing, and the big problem, the other problem we've got is the housing numbers. They're skewed towards Thanet and Swale, and places like Sevenoaks and Tunbridge per head are getting a lot less than the more sort of depressed areas. So I think you've got to argue against the numbers, and that will help with this problem as well. We definitely need social housing. When I was chairman of the planning committee, I proposed that because a lot of people don't like social housing built on their doorstep, I proposed we build houses on the side of the Milner estate, but the council wasn't interested at the time. It wouldn't have actually cost the council any money because there was a private contractor that wanted to build the houses. We've got, I think it's 2,500 to 3,000 people on the house list in East Kent. Why on earth do we need 17,000 houses built? I actually spoken to Craig McKinney on this, and I said to him, we supposedly have got an ageing population. In the next 5 years, 30% of the population is going to be retired. So it doesn't take a genius to work out that in the next 20 years, 30% of the population is going to be vacating their property. So we've got to argue along these lines now. Why do we need all these houses? The population explosion isn't happening. We're not producing loads and loads of babies anymore. So I think the actual numbers have got to be questioned. Michael Gove has got a good idea, and the NPPF, which should be your Bible in this fighting these houses, okay, there's amendments to that, but reading it is kicking it into the long grass in the next election. So even though they're not going to get voted in again, it's just kicking it in the long grass. So we have got okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I must say, to be honest, I haven't read Michael Gove's actual report on what he proposes to do, although I do agree that what other people said tonight, there should be some kind of reform or legislation on these Airbnbs. One of the biggest problems all councils have had is to provide the housing, and basically, I think here in Thanet, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's around 3,000 people on the list waiting for decent accommodation. And most of these people fall foul of what we know to be rogue landlords who put up substandard places, exorbitant rents with very little protection. If there's too many of these Airbnbs on offer or in the system, I believe that too many of these will actually hamper the council's work, and it doesn't matter which council it is, to try and get the housing situation under control. I mean, obviously, many years ago, government policies were to sell off council housing. There was nothing built to replace it, and we've landed up where we are today. So I'm cautious about the Airbnbs. I've heard about them, and I think that unless they are properly regulated, that they will hamper any council's efforts to try and bring about to redress the housing problems. And when we talk about affordable housing, which has been mentioned earlier, this has also been a bit of a red herring, because affordable housing, how do you define what is affordable? And what do you want if it is affordable? If you want a mansion overlooking the White Cliffs or whatever, wherever you may live, that may cost you £1 million. If you've got £1 million, then it's affordable. What we need, and what councils need to build, is social rentable housing there for the future generations of our kids and the youngsters that are going on. I'm at the end of, I'm in the autumn years of my life, so and many of us may be approaching that. But there are future generations who've got a bleak outlook. They're never going to get a mortgage. They're never going to virtually, I can't see any of them ever owning their own homes. So basically, anything that hampers the work of any council, and I strike the party political colours out of this, anything that hampers that work to bring about those homes, I wouldn't be in favour of. So I hope that Michael Gove's, what he's proposing, is going to be a bonus and not a negative.
He said, the Secretary of State said how important locally led planning policies were, but frequently the planning inspectorate drives in a coaching horses through decisions made by local authority, planning authorities, and he goes on about his particular constituency. Michael Gove replies, our changes to the National Planning Policy Framework are designed to do exactly that. I talked to the new Chief Executive of the Planning Inspectorate earlier to reinforce the point that my own friend has consistently made. So there's been a complete U-turn on planning policy. It's no longer going to be imposed from top down, it's going to be bottom up, based on local needs and local constraints. In our case, the constraint is going to be water, I say, to start with. And as Bigger said to Noddy many years ago, you've got to get the infrastructure sorted before you put the roof on and start worrying about the rain, but we won't get too much rain. So I want to know why this authority hasn't joined the 50 plus other local authorities which have already ditched their imposed local plans, or at least paused them. And we build from there, start again.
Could I ask your name, sir?
Jeff Walton.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we did have a question. Can I pose that question to each member of the panel? Because I think it is really a separate question to the one that was just asked. Would you agree? Yeah, so maybe we'll start with Mike then. Are you all right with the question? I think it's around
I think so. I think
the local plan and why the local plan continuing.
Yeah, I think what Jeff, I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, what you're asking is why, when there are 50 local authorities who have paused or ditched their local plan process, why haven't we? And I think we would probably be unanimous in this. We would all love to say, right, let's rip up our local plan, go back on it, just say we're not taking this local plan forward anymore and start again. We'd love to get together, consult locally, talk amongst all the councillors, to decide our own housing targets and decide our own local plan policies, we'd all love to do that. But as far as I'm aware, because I read what you sent round, and I thank you for that. All the local plans that have been paused are those that are currently in the review process, i.e. councils who haven't got a baseline local plan and are working on a new one. Unfortunately, for various reasons, for a simple reason, we have an adopted local plan, which among all of the policies in there, has a housing target of 17,000. And we are not currently, I don't believe, in a position to hold our hands up and say this local plan doesn't stand anymore, because the government, as it stands, would come in and say, you can't do that, we're going to take over your planning process. And I stand to be corrected. I can see the leader of the council's here, so I stand to be corrected. I think we'd all love to be able to do that. We know, also as far as I'm aware, there are changes, the government are talking about changes to enable councils who do have a local plan to revisit their local plan in where land is allocated on agricultural land, like the Westgate, Garlinge and the Birchington allocations are. But as that doesn't exist at the moment, as was mentioned by Tom at the end, or I think, I can't remember who it was. Anyway, it could be viewed that the government are kicking a lot of proposed changes into the long grass a little bit for the next lot to deal with. So could I just sort of finish off? So I think we need to be looking at, rather than just causing big ructions right away, we need to be looking at ways how we can delay having to make decisions on approving planning applications for these large developments until the time comes for the government to have taken action to enable us to do it without it costing the council hundreds of thousands of pounds.
We'll move the question now to get after the person that's up next.
Yes, I think what's happening here is that the government are very worried about what's going to happen in the elections next week. And they've done a lot of U-turns, as well as being on the Westgate Town Council. I'm also very committed to the movement of community councils, parish councils and town councils. So I sit on the Thanet Area Committee, which is all the local little councils, so there's Acol, Minster, Broadstead and so on and so forth. And I was also elected to sit on the CALC, the Kent Association of Local Councils Executive Committee. And on Saturday we actually had an executive committee meeting, and what was brought to my attention was something quite remarkable, in that when they do the development, there's a thing called 106. So there's section 106 of the Town Country Planning Act 1990, which means that contractors have to put money forward to build infrastructure, so to build community centres, schools, medical centres and so on. And there was a press release which was made on the 17th of March by Michael Gove, who said that he's come up with a new levy, a new community infrastructure levy. And he's actually going to abolish the 106 money. Now, the problem with this is that this new levy, which is the community infrastructure levy, is not new at all. It was in fact incorporated in the Planning Act 2008. So, to get back to what I'm trying to say is that the government, the Conservatives are very worried about losing a lot of councillors because there's been so much pressure put on local MPs and the likes of Michael Dove, and therefore the likes of Michael Dove, to do something about this atrocious situation, which is contractor-led development, where local people have no say whatsoever. You're just told this is what you're going to get whether you like it or not. And so they're doing these U-turns because they're frightened, politically frightened.
Right, ex-chairman of planning, MPPF, okay? It's quite a thick document, 75 pages, brought in by the Conservatives, okay, to give the builders carte blanche rules to build where they want, except in conservation areas or national parks. Anything we opposed got overturned on appeal. Conservatives' biggest backers, by the way, are builders. They had 891,000 in the first 3 months of 2021 of big builders. Michael Gove, to answer your question, sir, is kicking this into the long grass. On the third page, he's deleted all of the 5-year supply, which is what the councils were saying we had to supply. That's all deleted in the revamp. Okay, so all they're doing is kicking this into the long grass, and it will be the next government's problem. But the thing that I'm worried about is there's not one thing in here, and I've read it, to say that planning decisions at the moment that are thrown out can still be appealed. There's not one thing in there that says that can still happen. So that is the big worry here. Is he still looking after the finances of the Conservatives? I don't know. I think it's got to be read in detail. But having said that, there's enough in this document, if you know what you're talking about, to oppose these planning applications. What happened in Thanet was, you've got a chief planning officer called Ian Livingstone, and he read this was his Bible, and he told most of the planning committee that if we didn't sign up to this 5-year plan, we would go into special measures and we'd be taken over by the government. And because the people didn't have a good enough knowledge of this, on the committee they swallowed it. I read it and I started questioning what he was saying, and he didn't like it. I think it's about time more people read this. Okay?
It's a very
I know
simple
you're
view
happy,
of
but
politics.
there will be a chance to respond in a minute. So Tom, your response, please.
Well, I wish I'd like to read that, but unfortunately I haven't. But yeah, my understandings of the 106 agreements, which I think the speaker said that Michael Gove, no sorry, Councillor Donaldson said it's going to be abolished, replacement of the policy. The 106 agreements were normally, as far as I know, and always have been, they are the benefits to the local community for when you start building these different projects, so that you get we're talking about this huge development that's supposed to be going on over here on the agriculture land. Well, money from that then really should go to the infrastructure that you need for it, such as, 2,000 houses out there would really equate to almost doubling the size of Westgate. Because, if you look at the sort of 4 people in a family, we've got about 7,000 people living in Westgate now, and another 2,000 houses would basically double that. So you would need an awful lot more infrastructure, you would need the facilities and everything to go with it. So that's what the 106 money is normally aimed at. But I would question whether that 106 money that goes with these developments is actually going to be spent on any of these things. There have been so many developments over the years that have had to, they've come out with wonderful schemes about what they're going to build, community centres and libraries and all the sort of stuff's going in. What you find is the houses get built, and then after that there's no more money for what the 106 agreements are for. These are the things that we have to keep an eye on. So I don't know about whether they're going to abolish 106 agreements. What we have to do is to make sure that from the 106 agreements we get what we're entitled to have. Now I don't know, personally, What the 106 agreements right across that have been spent on at the moment, I do know they're building a new town and it's called Westwood Cross. And I do know that the roads are having to be altered and new roads are being built. And I believe that those roads and that actual circuit of roads where all roads will lead to Westwood Cross are being built out of the 106 monies. It should be coming back to communities like ours.
Right. I get the feeling that I might be by proxy a punching bag for central government. But I'll try and keep it on what this is actually meant to be about, and this election is meant to be about, which is local politics. So, I mean, for myself, I personally didn't adopt or vote for the local plan. I understand at that time that local plan was put through by the Labour administration. I do understand that that stage, though, we were in a position where it had been kicked down the road for so long that it was going to go to special measures. So it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, for myself, I understand now that it's very, very important to actually start fighting individual planning, and that is what I've been doing as your candidate. I've been actively involved. I've put forward my objections in writing, not just turning up and doing a speech today. Or I've actively taken the time. Writing's not my strong suit. I hate it, but I think that's the case for most people. You know, it's very quick and easy to say you don't like something, but to actually put it in there and put it into the actual general forum. So I put my objections into writing, how much I'm very against building an agricultural land, not just for Westgate, but also further afield in Thanet. I know that Thanet is an island that is actually really suffering. It doesn't have the infrastructure, doesn't have the road network, and it is basically a chokehold, and 17,000 houses plus more is just not viable. Our leader of the Conservative administration with the Valley District Council has actually been fighting and going against her very own government, because we don't always necessarily have to agree on national levels, and has written to Roger Gove 3 times, got a response, and has continued to do so. And I understand, I mean, some people are saying it's kicking the can down the road, but I still see that, yes, we do want to stop and protect agriculture land, but if you can kick the can down the road for 5 years or 10 years, that's still great. Keep doing it. I mean, put more pressure on, and that is what we're doing. That's what I feel like I've been doing as your local candidate. I've put myself, even when it hasn't convenienced myself, I work several jobs, but I've come to many of these action groups. I've supported them in many ways. I know that certain committee members may not see eye to eye with me politically, but at the end of the day, I live in Westgate, and I want the best for Westgate. And so when it comes to, in answer to the question, why it had been adopted, like I say, we were damned if we do, damned if we don't, but now the most important thing is, any of your candidates, hopefully myself, that the next election, the next 3 candidates you have for Westgate, for Garlinge, whomever, you need to make sure they actually do put their objection through, go to planning meetings, object where necessary. I mean, it isn't just Westgate, Somerton Ward, we've objected. We are and have been protecting agricultural land and will continue to do so. So again, I want to just keep it on the local, what this is today. I'm not an MP, I don't have any aspirations to be an MP. I just sit and work for Westgate. So that's the way it's going to be. So if these people want to play, you know, central politics, then hopefully they'll run for MP in the next general election and put themselves forward and out there. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'd just like to make a correction on the line 5. It's really in answer to Mr. Orton's question, and just to make it clear that this administration has actually paused the local plan process. Sorry, I'm Councillor Ashton, leader of the Council, and I also chair the local plan PAC, which is the Cabinet Advisory Group, and read the MPPF more than once. And although I've never had the honour of being the chair of planning, I feel I'm far more effective not being chair of planning, because I can say and do what I like. And as I have done with my goal on frequent occasions, this is the evidence here. there has been vast amounts of communication, and I'm pleased to say that, and I do believe there's some pressure from Sir Roger Gale and myself and the Cabinet has been applied to Michael Gove, and that's exactly why he's actually written the, he's actually proposed a consultation on the MPPF for various adjustments to be made. So it's not about politics. This goes back to over 12 months of fighting against my own government and our own government to actually say, we've had enough down here, we have to do something about it. And on the 14th of March, I wrote to Michael Gove and asked that we actually had special status in Thanet because of our demographics, because of our geographics, and for lots of other reasons. The fact that we are, I think it's 82% farmland in our whole district. 82% of our district is farmland. So that puts that bit straight. But in answer to your question, in October last year, the 9 years that we are now being asked to consult on, which is the additional 9 years to make up to the 2040 target date, has been put on hold. It wasn't kicked into the long grass as a result of us standing for election. It was put there because I decided as the chair of the Cabinet to make it, extend it out to September, because I knew there were going to be amendments to the white paper, to the MPPF. So that gave us breathing space to actually take it, and the plans work, because our date now is September, but now we have paper that tells us that we can object. The planning applications haven't gone in for these yet. This is our time now. When they go in, we'll kick them out, and we will continue to do that. And Michael Gove has given us the equipment now to actually do that. And then we fight, the inspector turns it over, then we go to the Secretary of State, and we say to him, you said that with reasonable cause, you will overturn the decision. So he's parked himself in a corner. So I think we're in a very good position, but we can only do this if this district returns us into power. Because, you know, with all due respect to backbenchers, how is, for instance, the Thanet Independent backbench councillor going to go up and have a meeting with Michael Gove and fight your corner from down here? So, you know, Conservative government, that's the easiest way to get the battle. The battle is with central government, but we can start it by making sure the applications are kicked out by planning committees. Okay?
What's going to happen on the planning? You sort of put something in. I didn't quite catch what it was.
Right, so the 9 years, basically the plan, the 2020 plan only took us up to 2031 because the local plan was 9 years late in being decided. Mainly because the UKIP council at the time didn't do anything, put us on the naughty step, and then it had to go through. And it was a Labour administration that actually adopted it in June 2020, but it was adopted by the whole council because we were on the naughty step. So we have 9 years short on our plan, and then what the government wanted to do was for us to then bring our plan up to date, which is 2040. So we needed to find another 9 years plan, of which they've come in and said 4,500 more houses. So the way to dodge that bullet was exactly what I did under the plan, which is to delay the decision process through. It was supposed to be now. We were in in February, but that's been pushed back to September. So by the time we get to September, we'll have all of this ammunition and all the stuff that's going on now, the pressure from the government. So we will be able to, when these plan applications come in...
That's just for the Garlinge area and Westgate.
Well, this is for the overall local plan.
The whole of that.
The whole of that. So
why are we still building Hayne Road? Why can't we stop the Hayne Road build?
Because that was already underway in the adopted plan.
Because if you speak to everybody in Thanet, there's no one who wants those houses anyway. So why the hell can't we just do, say, like extinction rooms, sit out on our fields and say, look, this is one arable land? You can if you want, but I mean, the point is that the adopted plan has designated sites in it, so that is why that's planning. Well, our battle must be with this 9 years. This is our battle now. The 2,000 out there have not been approved yet.
They are in the adopted plan, but now is the time to stop this.
So the battles for places like Hayne Road have all been lost.
If the planning application has been granted, yes. The battle loses when the planning application is granted, but our battle now is the 9 years. That is our battle. That is the one that we can win. That's the one that I've been writing constantly to change the whole purpose of how they calculate it. We can prove that we cannot possibly, we have never built our housing need. That paper there is a document that was prepared, took a long time to prepare it, but it proves that we've never met our needs. We've never been able to build, apart from 1 year, which was the sea bathing. That was the only year that we actually managed to build what we should have built. It was purely because the whole of the sea bathing complex went into our numbers.
Okay, so can any of you councillors work together and stop what's going to happen, stop the bill? Do you think you can resolve it? You might not just have a majority. Are you going to be able to work with the Greens, the Independents, the Labour, and work for the people of Thanet? Because that's what we want, isn't it?
It's not only us, there's 49 other councils.
And yeah, the whole country.
No matter who wins the council next week, whoever wins it, Labour, Conservative, they're all going to be against them houses on the fields. So nothing's going to change.
So, well, something should change. If you're all against it.
No, look, what I'm saying is, if the Conservatives win or if Labour win next week, whoever wins is still going to oppose the housing on the field.
We'll kick it out. We'll kick it out.
But yeah, and you'll achieve it.
I can confirm here now, and I spoke to Roger Garlinge this morning, whatever application comes through this council, and obviously the planning committee is based on proportionality. So the more seats the Conservative win, the more seats I have on planning, but we will kick out these planning applications. We will take the battle on.
I think the possibility made any party would pick it up. That's what I'm asking. I love it.
I'll sit down and let the next person go on this one.
I can only obviously speak for the Conservatives. Mike can speak for the Greens, and
Yeah, I can speak for the Labour. And I think there is cross-party support.
There's another thing you can keep this out on, and it's sustainability. The GPs in Thanet is the third worst in the whole country, behind Swale and Derwent in Blackburn. When Mansfield Green was passed, they said we're going to build a new GP surgery down there. I work in the NHS. I said, what are you going to put in this surgery in? They said GPs. I said, where are you going to get them? There's thousands of vacancies. Bethesda is 50% local and understaffed. Virtually every surgery in Thanet is understaffed. Sustainability, you can kick it out on that. And finally, Ash, I praise you for what you've done, and what you've done since you've been in power, I'll get rid of Madeline, and what you've done with the housing. And I'll give you a clap for that. I think you've been brilliant.
Where's the other microphone?
I need to come back there. So you should be wearing the right colour rose.
Credit Stu, you've done well.
Right, I've been charged with the microphone now. The interference because they were both on, so I'm sorry about that. Right, just to bring things back, I mean it's a really important discussion, but I'd like to move us on because there are some more questions.
You don't need a microphone, it's clear, you're clear about the microphone.
Yeah.
We are here about any housing related issues that this doesn't make. Okay, so the question is, with Southern Water openly admitting their failure to supply water to properties in Thanet, and therefore were required to distribute compensation to those affected, will they be offering compensation to those people directly impacted by sewage being pumped into the sea at an ever-increasing frequency, which is the result of the increased development? And if so, should compensation be made by other stakeholders who are also destroying habitat, reducing biodiversity, removing green spaces, all of which are damaging to people's mental health and well-being? I think it's a really good question. And who's first now? Who answered last time?
David.
I'm first, right, sorry. Yes, quite. So, in December 2020, Westgate Town Council made objections to the planning proposals, and they were indeed around not only sort of traffic congestion, there's not a proper access plan to the housing, but also conservation and ecological assessments are out of date, changes in farmland management, there's no renewable energy installation, and there's no clear plan for water supply and sewage. The problems of surface water drainage may be a risk of death indeed. People drowning, I suppose. And already Westgate-on-Sea actually, according to the Environment Agency, is in fact a flood risk area because of runoff water. And there has been many insurance claims, an abnormal number of insurance claims for flooded basements, and you may have noticed that your building insurance premiums have increased above the rate of inflation, etc. So it's, in terms of the damage, in terms of charging people for the social cost of the development, and the social cost of bad sewage systems, bad water supply, and the whole sort of mess that Southern Water has made of, doing their job. The water supply should have never been privatised. What they do is they just pour in money into shareholders' pockets while they pour sewage into the rivers and seas.
Going on for this, certainly they should be hammered, they should be fined a lot more than what they are being fined. The reason that they're doing nothing about it is because they're not being fined enough. If you look at Thanet, we've got Southern Water actually quote this in their spiel that they put out. We've got a Victorian sewer system which they're trying to upgrade. We've got a sewage plant that weather leads down the Sandwich, and it can't cope at the moment when we have a storm, and consequently the sewage gets mixed with the rainwater and it gets pumped into the sea. So if it can't cope at the moment, how the heck do they think they're going to cope with another 17,000 houses built? I do see that they're planning to build some more storage tanks, but they're nowhere near what is needed for the amount of houses that what they're proposing. And again, not knocking central government, it's a fact. It was privatised when it shouldn't have been. Fines aren't enough, and there's not enough investment. They've underinvested in Thanet. I think since 1999 it's been underinvested, the sewage. And this is by their own admission. So it's about time it changed, and it's about time that the Department of Environment started doing something about it, because it's something we can't do anything about. We can't fight it in the local plan, because this is another thing which is unacceptable. So that is another one of our tools in our toolbox to fight this. Southern Water actually admit, when you put concrete down, the rainwater doesn't drain into the soil, it goes into the sewage system. And then when that overflows, that goes in the sea. So this is another area where we've got to fight it. There's several areas where we can oppose these houses, and if we put a good enough case together, I think they'd be too frightened to pass it. Okay, so that is my view, being an ex-chairman of planning. Don't be bullied by the civil servants like we're seeing happening in Whitehall at the moment. Civil servants are in the know. The councillor that just starts, hasn't got any experience, isn't in the know. This is why you need experienced councillors, people that can call them to book. Okay? That is my view.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with everything I've heard really on this. I think we've all quite disgusted with the performance of Southern Water. I know that it was, as I said, 8 years ago since I was last at TDC, and it was just the same then. the pipe, then the excuse was that the pipes that was down at the pumping station near Corness didn't go out far enough, and when the tide came in, it brought it back in. And, you know, I'm talking about 8 years ago, and Planet's still got a sewage problem. I think we all know that between the privatisation of the utilities, which I've always been against anyway, I mean, it's my own personal opinion, whether everyone believes it or not tonight, I do not believe in I do not believe in the privatisation of public utilities. There are utilities that should be there to serve us, not shareholders' pockets, as has been said, and I agree with. And quite frankly, if the water industry was renationalised, I would be more than happy to see it. And I think that's good. Also, the compensation claims are in order, but with Southern Water, the amount of money that they have to pay in compensation shows you just how much money that they are making, that they keep on doing the same thing, because it is worth it for them just to carry on in the same way. So basically, until any government, and I'm not getting involved in colours again, I'm supposed to be independent, but until any government gets a handle on this and makes it a real offence, even a criminal offence, and ramps up these charges to make it totally unviable for them to pollute our waters. Until we get that, it's going to be another 8 years and we'll still be in the same position.
Shall I let the
Yeah, okay.
councillors
Just keen to get
and
in
then...
there, so I'll stop myself.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I mean, in answer to your actual initial question regarding if compensation should be obtained, I believe the council, again, on a local level, has pushed very hard and has claimed some compensation. Ideally, would want more, but I mean, the fact that that has actually been broached and put forward and reinvested back into Thanet. I mean, I personally do feel, yes, Southern Water has let us down time and time again. And I would say to anyone on an individual basis that, yeah, we should be writing to Southern Water and saying, I'm not prepared to pay for my own sewage waste, because that's it, that's what we can do on an individual level. I mean, again, I can only speak about what I've done and what I want to continue to do, which is, there's been numerous times that Southern Water, to, you know, their detriment or their interest, have actually done open public forums, to which I did attend as one of your councillors. I mean, there wasn't a lot of, I mean, there's over, around about 52 councillors currently in Thanet, and there wasn't 52 there when I saw them. So, the fact is that, as your councillor, and hopefully your candidate going forwards, I will still continue to put the pressure on. I mean, it is obviously going to be more on a central government level, and to my understanding, the Conservatives at the moment have actually put forward unlimited fines. They are actually hot on this now, in the sense that they are prepared to actually say enough is enough, because they do understand, and I think it is down on the local level where we have actually been screaming and actually saying, listen, us as a coastal town can't be taken. I mean, we as a coastal town rely on the inner cities for their money to come down and enjoy what Thanet has to offer.
But that really goes back to one of my points, is that as regards compensation, it should be as a collective as Thanet makes compensation claims, not individuals, because if you look at them, obviously Southern Water, because of the profits they're making, they can afford to pay individual claims. You know, it might be 100 people at like £10,000, that's nothing to them. But as a collective, the damage they're doing to the environment and the viewpoint of Thanet is colossal. So the Thanet should have to claim against Southern Water for the damage they're doing to the image they're creating.
And they have, and I mean, I believe they will continue to do so. We'll with the administration as a Conservative.
Where is that? I haven't seen any colossal fines.
I
don't mean individual levels, and I don't mean the ongoing ones.
No, I mean,
when there's a storm, to say, yeah, it was exceptionally wet, it was 2 inches of rain in 24 hours. And so the guy at the last meeting said, which is a right contradiction, well, we know it's totally unacceptable to make these, discharged into the sea on a regular basis. Well, obviously it's not unacceptable, it's acceptable because they're doing it on a regular basis, and it will continue to be an increasing discharge level. Because of the, you know, the infrequency of rain, when it rains much heavier now, doesn't it? We get droughts, we get massive storms.
And I mean, I would definitely say to everyone, again, individually, not just as Farmland District Council, because whether we like it or not, we all are a customer of Southern Water, to put those complaints forward. So, I mean, how many people have individually complained to Southern Water? I have. I've had people in my area, my constituents, ask what they should be doing. And I said, on a personal level, it's up to you what you want to do. Don't pay for your
Yeah, but it should be collective, shouldn't it? It should be a collective.
But that's it. I mean, a collective is. I mean, there's what, over 100,000 people in Farmland. How many? 100 of these 1,000 people.
But if,
we
if
do
there's,
represent.
for example, let's say it's a bank holiday weekend.
But I can give advice completely on a complete business, but I can put forward and put complaints over, which have been done.
Yeah. First of all, I'm not picking on you, I do apologise.
No,
It needs
that's
to be a council standard, what you said.
Exactly. It's a
90%
bank
of the whole
holiday weekend.
council says this is unacceptable.
It's a bank holiday
We want
weekend.
compensation for the people of Thanet, get the money off Southern Water, then put that into the infrastructure and invest on it.
As a bank holiday weekend comes in, there's a massive discharge into the sea around Thanet. People aren't going to think, actually, let's come to Thanet for a day out.
They're not going to listen to my letter, they need to come from you lot collectively as your authority. You've got to work together.
Can we give Mike a chance to answer this as well?
Yeah. Southern Water, there's a lot to say about Southern Water, and there's a lot been said. They're a disgrace. I think that goes without needing to be said, really. Compensation, you're right. They owe us. They owe us a lot. On an individual basis and on a collective basis, I agree. Our businesses suffered over the summer, and our individuals suffered when they went without water. Now, it isn't our statutory role as a council to chase Southern Water for compensation for businesses and for individuals. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. We have built up, through the auspices of the current leader and a number of us councillors, a relationship with Southern Water, and we have been able to use that. I have used that, and I will continue to use that. I had a number of residents in my ward in St Peters who went without water, who I said, who hasn't received compensation? And a number of them told me. I've been on at Southern Water on their behalf. They found out 244 households on a Wimpy estate of 500 households had not received any compensation. So through me talking to them about it, they then gave all of those residents £110 compensation. Now that's quite a good result for those residents. Now it isn't our statutory role to do that, but it is something that we can do as a collective. That isn't a party political thing. That's a thing that we're elected to represent you and residents to do that. So that's what we should be doing more, working together, as you said, to do what's right for our residents.
Here, here!
Thank you. I will also say that it's obvious the Southern Water infrastructure isn't fit for purpose. It isn't fit for purpose for us who live here now. It is certainly not fit for purpose for any new large housing estates, any new large housing developments, any new other developments. It's only going to be worse until Southern Water, they've had years to sort this out, they haven't done it. We need to say to them, we will not, well, we need to be saying to ourselves as well, we will not be given permission for any new housing developments until the Southern Water infrastructure is fit for purpose. Now I see this as an opportunity for us to be able to, Ash leaders talked about the pause of the future local plan, but as she said, we do have a local plan which has allocated sites, and we need reasons that we can hold up when any developments any applications go to appeal, to enable us to refuse those permissions. Having infrastructure that isn't fit for purpose, I believe, should be a reason, and is a reason, for us to reject large applications until that's in place. Now, there are things we can do to make sure Southern Water are asked, when large planning applications come through, to provide more information to us. As part of that planning process, we can make changes. Other councils have made those changes, and we should be asking them for much more clarity. How are you going to deal with this new sewage that people in these houses are going to create? Where are the treatment works that are going to manage these sewage going to be? And how are you going to monitor any increases in these things? And I just think we need to be focusing on the terrible state of their infrastructure as one of the ways of putting a stop to a lot of these larger houses. And he said he was the Southern Water Director of Water, I think for the whole of Southern Water, not just for Kent. And he quite clearly said that they would be happy to take a more active role in the planning process. They would be prepared to provide more consultative information when large planning applications are considered. And we should be, that's one of the first things we should be doing, the new council, when it's elected, whoever it is, from whichever parties, we should be, one of the first things we should be doing is writing to them and saying, we're changing our process, we want more information. It should be one of the statutory consultees for all of these large planning applications. Southern Water, how are you going to deal with the sewage? How are you going to make sure you're supplying the water? Which sewage treatment works are going to be doing this? Getting them to give us the information.
There's all projects made for it.
Quite easy saying, obviously you're not going to be able to vote for me, but I can speak on behalf of the Green candidate. If you vote for them and they're elected, they would do exactly the same. We need to get those commitments from us.
Is there anybody else on the floor who wants to make a comment on that subject? We ask this gentleman. No.
Okay, just more than anything else, the problem is in adopting a local plan and saying it was independently scrutinised by the planning inspectorate themselves to say it was a sustainable plan in terms of water supply, housing numbers, the whole damn thing. I completely objected to it. Many of you did as well about water, and it was effectively kicked out by the Secretary of State's planning inspectorate. Now the problem with that is that's now made a credible plan uncredible by the fact that we can't support the housing quite clearly, but they have. And there's a contradiction in terms here in your planning process here. Now, that's by the by, that's what's happened, that's what you're going to get in the next, until we get a new local plan to actually re-look at that. But the point is here, I don't quite understand why a council officer has gone through a strategic planning process over many years and didn't address this issue and actually get the right consultation from Southern Water, from all the consultants available to actually knock this on its head. It didn't happen, and all it's going to do is accelerate this if we're not careful. I think the concern here as well is regulation. It doesn't appear to me to be very strong either. It's all very well fining the company, but if it's losing or going to be declared bankrupt, what is the point of that? I just think in some ways we need to look at how public utilities are going to be. That's obviously not a local level, but I think that's an argument that should be put through at local level.
I've spoken to...
Maureen's going to actually ask that now. Yeah. Yeah.
It's stated actually that, well, what we want to know is Westgate population in 2011 amounted 7,517, and in Burgington it amounted to, sorry, should have got my glasses. In Burgington in 2011 it was 9,961. In 2021, population will have only risen in Westgate by 521 people. And in Burchington it will have only risen by 431 people. So that's from 2011 to 2021. That's the increase in population in Burchington and Westgate. So So why is the local plan asking both areas to have so many houses? Hey.
I'm going to answer this question, right? You're not going to like it, okay? I'll tell you a little story. I've got a sister and she moved from Sidcup to Northampton to be in the country. I said to her, you haven't moved far enough. Anywhere within 100 miles of London is going to get the London overspill. If you have a family of 4 that don't work in somewhere like Lambeth or Lewisham or Greenwich, it costs a fortune to keep them in a council house. Far cheaper for that council to relocate them to Hastings or Swale or Thanet. And it's already happened at Westwood Cross. Lewisham built Walk 50 up there. We haven't got enough population increase to fill 17,000 houses, as you rightly say. It is the London overspill which we're going to get. This is the big problem. We can only fight this, as Ash said, on individual plans. And by the way, these housing figures, I don't know if any of you are very good at physics, but there's quite a decent equation you can get up if you go on the website, and that is how they plan these housing figures. And they're all skewed, as I said earlier on, to the poorer areas because the cost of the land is cheaper in the poor areas, and it's easier for them to build mass houses on cheaper land than dear land. So that is what we have got to fight against. We've got to fight against this equation, which is skewed against us. But what you will see the London overspill trickling in down here. And this is what we've got to fight on a plan-to-plan basis, okay? And we can only do it if we all stick together. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, it was about population, wasn't it? Yeah, it's much what you said is, I have to relate back, which I do when I was first elected as a councillor. In fact, Westgate's population, I remember, was 6,594. And I think by the time I'd done one term of office and was standing for election again, it went up to something like, I went up about 100. And then we started hearing these things, because it was actually in 2011 that this suggestion of putting 1,000 houses, and it was 1,000 houses, it wasn't 2,000, it was 1,000 houses out on that land. And this is I actually brought it along tonight just to those who might be interested. That was in 2011, and that was 1,000 houses, right? And basically, I mean, it's got worse, obviously, because of going back to when the local plan was being discussed, and I wasn't on the council then at the time, but I was taking an interest in it. But I think one of the biggest bugbears, and brought into the equation, was Manston Airport. And there was an option there for, it was called option 2, aviation only, which went into the local plan. And when that went in, we immediately got another 1,000 houses. That's when it became 2,000 houses. So whoever was voting for option 2 are the ones that should be looking in the mirror today, because they're partly responsible for that one extra 1,000 houses in hospitals on Westgate and Birchington and the rest of it. So I've always asked the question, what is local about our local plan? And the answer is nothing. Because there ain't no benefit to local people. And all those people that want houses on fans' housing list, you can be sure that they won't get one. They'll go out to landlords, they'll go out to Airbnbs, they'll go out to investors, they'll go out to all the people, but not the people that think that need them. So ask yourself the question, what is a local plan? This isn't.
Right, yeah. I couldn't tell you scientifically why they're there's such a demand, especially with the 17,000 houses, obviously the growth. I mean, I personally have always disagreed with that amount anyway, and I also believe, so does our actual North Conservative MP, is arguing the actual amount. I believe it's done some skewed data, just where they collated it in the past, and I think one particular year, it may have been the year that was the build of the Seabathing Hospital, sort of just showed there was a slight increase of a migration to Thanet, which put those numbers up, and I understand that the housing numbers are sort of built every 5,000 houses per year, the demand that's got to be met. But again, I mean, for me, on a local level, I've always argued that amount, Thanet-wide, as well as the 2,000 houses on the actual agricultural land. I've put that in my objections, which is that just looking at COVID in general, that has completely changed the circumstances. We now, more than ever, do need to rely on farmland, local produced, UK produced produce. It's not only more environmentally friendly, it actually just benefits us as a whole. And I feel that that's what we should be pushing, and something I've continuously pushed for. I mean, even before becoming a councillor, I kind of got involved with the idea of housing. When I originally sort of put myself forward as, and also in the town council, but when I put myself forward to become a town councillor, at the time Westgate on Sea were developing a neighbourhood plan. So at that stage I got speaking with Dr. Hannah Scott, who before I believe this group took the helms, and to be fair, has actually pushed it further amongst the residents. So I do believe this group has the best intentions, is continue to actually push and fight. I'll be there with them. But yeah, I understood and started to get an understanding of what's happening with Westgate, and I took an interest even before I decided to become involved with local politics. And you know, I hope that is the case for our candidates today, and the ones that have turned up, or the ones that are being represented by those who haven't turned up. Hopefully they have whoever do live in Westgate have put those objections in personally, because it doesn't take being involved in local government to get your voices heard. I mean, yeah, we're conduit to your voices, and we'll put ourselves forwards to have a word and get involved with TDC and push that forward. But in the same breath, I say, if you're an individual, use that voice, put that out there, get those objections in. It's one of the things I put on the post. So, yeah, I don't agree with the numbers. I don't agree with the amount that's coming through, and I will continue to argue against that. So, hopefully I can.
As far as the numbers are concerned, I mean, I think you'll have as far as the numbers are concerned, I mean, none of us here agree with the numbers. None of us like the numbers. None of us, but I don't think there's anybody here who could properly explain where the numbers came from. ONS numbers were misrepresented, and the formulas that we use were wrong. But they're the numbers we're lumbered with at the moment. We need to do all we can. I think we've said a lot so far tonight about what we need to do to limit as much as possible the number of large planning applications that get approved, until there is a chance later on to overturn some of those numbers. And we've had a number of commitments from people about what we would do, those of us who get elected. And one thing I will say, I would like, because I did want to raise at some stage this evening, relating to numbers, there are, we've mentioned earlier the number of Airbnbs that there are. There are a large number of properties that aren't primary residences for people across Thanet. And I certainly think any new house we do build should be built as primary residence, not to add to the number of empty homes, of which there are about 1,500 long-term, medium to long-term empty homes, another 1,500 second homes. There are a number of furnished homes across the district that people use for a few weeks in the year. And then there's the Airbnbs. Now, I'm not saying we as councillors can do a great deal about that now, but we certainly should be using our voices. Matthew's said quite a number of times we need to use our voices. We certainly do need to use our voices to lobby hard as a council for the government to do something about that, to make it easier for us, to make sure that houses aren't being built as investments, they're being built as homes for people. So that's something else I wanted us to think about as well this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it, you know, it just goes to show, you know, an increasing population of 521 people with Westgate in 10 years just goes to show what a complete sham the whole thing is. In that it's, you know, it's not a local plan, it's not for local people, there's no affordable housing, and it's something, and you know, I shouldn't really say this, which is the Labour Party's view. So Alex Norris, who's the cabinet, shadow cabinet minister for levelling up and housing and communities, view is that the whole system needs to be completely taken apart and start again. And there has to be local involvement. It has to be, you know, when we say local plan, it has to be a genuine local plan for local people. It has to have, you know, proper affordable housing, and also, you know, proper services like water and sewerage. So, you know, all these things, and I can't really add anything else apart from, you know, the whole thing is absolutely a disgrace, and you know, we have to fight against it. I think there is, you know, as well as the Westgate and Garlinge Housing Action Group, there are, you know, something like 600 groups throughout the country who have put a tremendous amount of pressure on the powers that be, and this has indeed caused these U-turns. So when, you know, Michael Gove is saying that, you know, wait a minute, we're not going to quite do it like that, we want it, you know, bottom up. And, you know, and I think all the groups, and Westgate and Garlinge Housing Action Group should be really congratulated on all the work they've done over the last few years in terms of bringing this to the attention of the local people, and also it's part of, you know, a national, it's not organised together, but it's a national pressure that has had an impact, and people are sitting up and listening. And I certainly know that the National Association of Local Councils, which is all the, you know, something like 10,000 local councils in England and Wales, and they also have been through, you know, their residents and housing action groups have been pushing this on a national level to change the national policy.
When they're there, so that's that.
I would agree. I mean, we're all in favour of any sort of citizens' assembly on any of these issues that we need people's involvement to tackle. So I would agree.
Yeah, well, you know, I would also agree, and I think, you know, there's a great power in working together. In the forum would probably have a broader base in that people like Southern Water, you know, would maybe have a seat at the table. Yes, I would certainly support that.
Yes, I would support it. Obviously, your elected councillors are your spokespersons, but it'd be good if some of these forums could unite. We could have something sort of, I don't know, a bit bigger, because the more people you've got, the more clout you've got. So I would support it, yes.
Yeah, yeah, I've done along with it. I'd just like to make the point it's a good turnout here tonight. Everyone's down tonight, showing a lot of interest. But there's also the opportunities to show that same sort of interest at your local council meetings. and unfortunately most of them are very, very poorly attended. You don't get very many people turning up, and this is not really a criticism of people, but that opportunity is there for you. These councils are yours. You pay for them, and the first place that you should really come and also make a contribution to make your voice heard.
Town council, you're saying?
Well, it's a town council, parish council, even up to the district council. I think the district council gets a better turnout.
Well, I would assume a forum would include.
But these are the first calls for your opinions and what you want. And obviously, every 4 years you get that choice as well. So that is the best. That is the best and biggest forum at the moment. I think it's quite underused.
Might have been answered.
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
that's too.
probably answered it actually, but
Yeah.
I'll ask it anyway, just to agree with it. Our question was, what have you done and what do you propose to do to support local action groups campaigning to save Thanet's best and most versatile grade 1 and 2 productive black farmland for housing development? So what have you done and what are you all going to do?
To protect the farmland.
Yeah. And that's what we do.
I think maybe we can ask for a fairly brief answer.
Are we starting with Tom?
Yeah,
In the
we'll
first
start with Tom. And because I think we have 10 minutes in then for promote discussion.
As I said, just briefly, this is not new to me. I've been involved in this since 2011 when we first raised it its head, unfortunately at 1,000 houses. And as I've showed you this was part of the first campaign that we set up, and it's been going on through various forms ever since. I've supported the present campaign, which has been set up by Neil and Maureen and the rest of them. Obviously, I'll continue to do so. I don't want to see the agricultural land being built over. I think in these days and age, especially this day and age, we should be self-sufficient with our own food and what we've got, instead of importing. I think nearly 80% of our food is abroad. So I think we've got the means here and we should be hanging on to it. So yeah, I support it all the way.
Right, yeah, I mean, I'll try and keep it brief, but like I say, I got involved in this in 2017 when I was made aware of it. Since then, I've got myself involved one way or another. I would attend meetings. Granted, I'm not the brightest person when it comes to planning law, but I will always learn, and I'm always prepared to learn. I've been involved with the neighbourhood plan, so that's a very important document to protect Westgate, and if any future development does happen, that it does actually fit in line with the view of Westgate. Obviously, we don't want this build affecting agricultural land, and I'll continue to fight against that. I mean, I've done what I've done previously, and I'll continue to do what I've done so. I'm not just active on Facebook, but I actually do attend the meetings. I feel it's just as important to go beyond social media. Not everyone has social media, so being visible at meetings, at events, at protests is the way to be. I mean, I think it isn't just showing your face, but it's also taking the actions. I've made my own personal objections. I also did respond to the MPPF. These are things that were asked from my residents, and these are things I did and delivered for my residents. So I'll continue to do that. You ask, I'll deliver as best I can. Thank you.
Speaking personally, and although I think I can speak for the others in my group, and certainly for the candidates, we've been on quite a steep learning curve over the last few years. Since I got elected, I've learned a lot about planning and about what's proposed for this area. I've got involved with a number of groups around the district, certainly got involved with the Westgate and Garlinge Action Group. I've spoken up, as we all have. We've showed up as well when there's been demonstrations. We speak up and we challenge at all council meetings. We ask questions, challenging questions, and we raise objections when we need to raise objections. So we've always, since we've been on the council and I'm sure it'll be the same for any of our other candidates when they become councillors. I like Abby's phrase, we show up and we speak up and we work hard to try and support residents and you in your fight against this overdevelopment all the way across the valley, not just Westgate and Garlinge.
Yeah, I've also been interested in this since 2017 when it was the first round of consultation. I support, very much support, and I'm very impressed actually with the local action group in terms of their determination and their ability to be, to hold their meetings every month without fail. And to go on, their various demonstrations. I'm also very much involved in the local authority movement. I'm on the executive committee representing Thanet at the Kent Association of Local Councils, and which also links into the National Association of Local Councils. And I've supported other local authorities who are in the same sort of position as we are, and the National Association of Local Councils does actually have quite a lot of clout at a national level to modify policy when the local people are really objective, and they kind of bring it together as this sort of super council, if you like, who are in there talking to cabinet ministers and who are making a real positive change to the sort of policies and U-turn and Prime Michael Gove, etc. that we discussed. And I will continue to support this, to support the action group and any other action groups that are, I mean, I went to a meeting recently at Belting, which was the village action group, which was very similar to this one here, and they're doing just quite a splendid job.
My answer to the question is, I'll give you a little bit of a history exam on this before I start. Before the MPPF, it was really, really difficult to build on farmland. You've got grade 1, grade 2 and grade 3 farmland in Thanet. With the advent of the NPPF, a farmer could take a field which was worth £1 million and turn it into £4 million without land of brick, just by getting outline planning permission on it. So I would fight all of these houses, I'd fight the NPPF, I'd fight the numbers, and I would fight until the end. But what you need more numbers, you need bigger groups of people. I was on a committee that fought the closure of a Lewisham Hospital, and we had marches and we had thousands of people turn out, and it got overturned. Government didn't like it, but that's overturning it. You need people power with this. I would support it, and with my experience, I'd be a pain in their butt at every turn. I can assure you of that. As I said, if Ashley's the leader after next Thursday, I'll be writing to her every turn and asking her to help me stop these houses. Okay? Got my personal promise of that. Thank you very much.
I think the other part was what have you done so far?
What have I done so far? Right. When I was the chairman of planning, I did oppose quite a lot of things. The Manchester Green, I got accused of kicking that into the long grass for a couple of years. In the end, it was never inevitable. It was going to go through. I think Trevor Strong comes out. There wasn't a lot of opposition to that because it's bordered on by factories, so there wasn't a lot of people. But the water was a big concern with that. They was worried about the water. I think at the time they just had a drought and everyone was on hosepipe bans, so there was a big stumbling point to the water. But there's loads and loads of other things you can do to keep these plans into the long grass until we get time to properly get it kicked out. Thank you very much. Chubby, nothing done. Okay. I will continue to keep arguing about government policies and these sort of policies, but on a local level, I mean, I've got a lot of admiration for Ash. When I was a councillor before, we had a brilliant councillor at Ramsgate called Councillor Campbell, sadly died, and he was fantastic. He was a lovely man. So, party politics, as far as I'm concerned, you've got to work together. I mean, I've spoken to people inside of me tonight, I value that. You have to value people's opinions, and you have to work together, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always happy to work together with anybody, as long as it, especially if it's for the benefit of Westgate. When I was last elected for Westgate, that's what it was. I was elected under the banner that I would work for local people, not local politics. It remains the same today. If it's good for Westgate, I always support it. If I don't think it's good for Westgate, it's not good for the people of Westgate, then if it means standing up and saying it, I will do.
Thank you. Well, I think that was actually quite a positive question to end on. Sounds like everybody's in agreement, we're going to work together to stop this development.
I've got a question. For these elections notoriously have really, really bad turnouts. So I urge you all to go and tell your neighbours to get out and vote, because that is the only way that you'll get a positive